Now, Matthew, I want to start tonight. We got some news this morning. I know you were excited in our group chat. Katherine Legge is going to make her Cup Series debut. Of course, she's made a couple of stock car starts here recently. Ran the ARCA race at Daytona, ran the Indianapolis 500 the last couple of years as well. She does have some NASCAR Xfinity Series experience. What's your reaction to the news, first and foremost, that she's going to be in the Live Fast Motorsports number 78 of Phoenix?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny how I think I sent something in our group chat earlier in the week. She posted something on her Instagram story, and you could tell it was a car, but it looked kind of like a stock car. And then if you do the phone trick, a lot of people do, and up the exposure and stuff, you saw it was the number 78 with the sponsor. I can't think off the top of my head what it is. And it's like, oh my God, she's going cup racing. I was thinking, is she going to do the double? That would be awesome. But no, it's very exciting. Not only just to bring, I love the idea of bringing new faces to NASCAR. And I know she's been here before. She has extensive motorsport experience. So that's why I'm very excited to have her at the cup level. I know it's Phoenix. It's a little different than if you tried to put her in the 500, for example, but to put her on a short track like this in a Live Fast number 78 Chevrolet, you got to be excited, right? I mean, she's so many disciplines. She's anytime she wants to race, she'll get in whatever car and she'll go out there. Whether she wins or not, whatever place she finishes on Sunday, it's going to be exciting, and it's historic when you think about it, right? We haven't had a NASCAR Cup Series driver that was female or a woman NASCAR Cup driver in 2018. I think that was Danica's last
start, yeah.
So it's exciting. Katherine has over 2 decades of racing experience. She has almost 50 IndyCar starts. She's the fastest woman Indy 500 qualifier, I should say, fastest speed. I think it was 2:31 off the top of my head. I'm trying to think. There's so many things going on in my mind right now just about her and her racing career, and it's just so exciting. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think she's ready for a start. I mean, when you have experience, I think she's been racing cars longer than you and I have even been on the planet. So it's pretty cool to see her get a shot at the cup level. But it does surprise me that it's kind of random. I don't know about you. I don't know if you want to touch on that, but kind of you would think there was going to be hype around it. There's going to be breaking news. There's going to be a woman NASCAR driver again in the Cup Series. But this kind of just came out of the blue, and it was yeah, I'm just racing Phoenix in the Cup Series. That's pretty awesome. But I feel like there should have been more hype about it. But I don't know what your takeaways are.
Yeah, it's funny, Matthew, because when we do these open segments to start the show, it's normally because, I've got really strong feelings on something that's going on in the sport, and I, want to have this outlet to share it. But, today I can't help but feel a little bit conflicted about this. Not because I don't think Katherine Legge is ready. I think, like you said, she's got a ton of racing experience, but I look at her NASCAR and stock car resume specifically, and Bob Pockrass already confirmed that she's approved to run. NASCAR cited her Indianapolis 500 experience in the last couple of years, and also doing the ARCA race at Daytona. I think that played no small role in her getting the green light to do this. But just looking at her stats here, 5 Xfinity Series starts, obviously the ARCA race at Daytona earlier this year. And I can't help but think back to the fact that, like you said, Danica Patrick, the 2018 Daytona 500, it's the last time we've had a female driver in the Cup Series, but it shouldn't have been. Jennifer Jo Cobb was supposed to make her Cup Series debut for Rick Ware Racing at Talladega in 2021. NASCAR didn't approve that. And Jennifer Jo Cobb, again, say what you will about what happened in the fall Truck Series race that year. I will still stand by my opinion that NASCAR has approved far more controversial things in the past when it comes to drivers making a Cup Series debut. I understand Jennifer Jo Cobb does not have the resume necessarily of a bunch of wins and championships that would make her qualified in the eyes of some people to run a Cup Series race, but she has the experience. She had been racing in the National Series for a decade and a half at that point, and she was the highest finishing female Truck Series driver for 9 years, and that was a race that took place at Daytona on a super speedway. So I saw no reason. If it had been the playoff Cup race at Talladega, maybe that's a different story because there's higher stakes. And if this for Katherine Legge were the championship race at Phoenix, maybe it's a different story because there's higher stakes on the line for other drivers in the field. But the fact that it's a spring race before the playoffs, everybody's got to start somewhere. So I have absolutely no problem. And like you, Matthew, I'm actually very excited. I think Katherine Legge is deserving of this opportunity. I don't expect her to win. Obviously, it's an open car and it's a Cup debut. for somebody who still doesn't have a ton of NASCAR National Series experience. So I think for her, it's just going to be about going out there and gaining that experience and, running the best that she can given the equipment that she's in. But I think she's a more than competent enough driver to warrant a start like this. But having said that, it is hard not to think back to a few years ago, and it still leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth that we never got that Cup Series start from Jennifer Jo Cobb. And I don't know. I know Rick Ware's running that open car for Corey LaJoie this year. Maybe there would be a track where she would be approved to run. I still feel like NASCAR owes her the opportunity to run a Cup race before she decides to hang up the helmet for good. But in the meantime, for Katherine Legge here, I'm excited for her to get this opportunity. And it is nice to have a female driver back behind the wheel of a Cup Series car again, even even if it is just for one race here. But I'm with you, Matthew. I couldn't help but think back to the Indy 500 the last couple of years, and obviously everybody's been talking about Kyle Larson doing the double. Wouldn't that be something if Katherine Legge could pull something like that off? Obviously, Kyle's got all the Hendrick and McLaren sponsors and resources. I feel like that would be exponentially harder for somebody like Katherine Legge to pull off with the teams that she's competing for, and the backing that she has in comparison to Larson, I'm sure is a shoestring budget. But it's good to see her in the Cup Series nonetheless, and I wish her nothing but the best this upcoming weekend in Phoenix.
Oh no, without a doubt, a lot of it is sponsorship. So for her, it must mean a lot to her personally. I don't know if anyone has asked her, and yes, a day in the life. Her racing resume is very impressive, like Ben and I allude to. And then Adam saying it's very cool news regarding her. Absolutely, it is. For two points I want to make. One, it's interesting, and I don't know if anyone has asked her about kind of if this race has a sort of meaning, because if you're gathering up, working, getting sponsorship, getting a ride to do just a random NASCAR Cup Series race, the 4th of the season in Phoenix, it's like there's got to be some sort of other meaning to it. Unless, you just had the money at the right time and you're like, I got to close this deal now and went. So, I mean, that's another point. Looking forward to that. And the question I have for you, too, in terms of, I know we talked about Jennifer Jo Cobb, and then there's been other approvals. I know people were still mad about Mike Wallace. I saw some of those comments about, well, Mike Wallace wasn't approved. I know we had agreements, disagreements. But in terms of, I don't know if this is going to sound correct, in terms of valuing talent from other motorsport, do you think NASCAR takes into consideration how successful a driver is in another sport versus, I know, like the super license? I feel like if you're not in a Formula or an FIA-based series, you're almost punished in the sense. Like I know we talked, it would have been a couple of years ago with Colton Herta was willing to leave the top level of American open wheel motorsport to go to a lower series to compete to try to make his way into Formula One because he didn't have enough super license points. So I was just going to ask you, do you think NASCAR almost values, not going to say talent, but experience from other sports, other disciplines of motorsports far more than like the FIA would consider a NASCAR driver or a pretty much IndyCar driver, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I think the super license kind of has the opposite problem, right? If NASCAR's, let some questionable things through, I think maybe, nothing against Tanner Berryhill, but I think it was Biker Racing making their Cup debut again, like at Phoenix, which was the penultimate race in 2018. I think that was, that's something that I feel like, when you consider the grand scheme of the championship and the playoffs, maybe that's something that should have happened again at the spring race or at a different track earlier in the season. But to your point about Colton Herta, I think that was a situation where a driver was qualified to potentially make that switch. AlphaTauri seemed to want him, and yet because of this arbitrary super license system, which is designed to keep drivers who are unqualified from just jumping right into Formula One, and you have drivers like Lance Stroll whose credentials have come under question in recent years, while simultaneously it shuts out Colton Herta or maybe, a driver from a series like NASCAR Cup, that is a championship caliber driver who I don't think would be a championship caliber driver if you just plopped him into an F1 car right away, but would certainly be a skillful race car driver that would have the capabilities of picking up that talent and learning it in single seaters. I just feel like, that kind of, like I said, it's the opposite issue there where you risk shutting out a driver that would be otherwise qualified, but they just don't have enough marks on their super license card, so to speak, to make that transition over to Formula One. So Yeah, I would say I think NASCAR's system is probably preferable. I'd rather have a few slip through the cracks that shouldn't be, as opposed to what we see in F1 with Colton Herta and everything. But again, you know what? And I saw, I don't know if you're referring to Brett Griffin's tweet from the Couch Racer shop account. I think he basically said Mike Wallace would lap her in her backup car, which I think is just it's kind of ridiculous and pathetic that he has nothing better to do with his time than tweet that from not really anonymous account. I mean, everybody knows who's running that account. It's obviously Brett, but I listen. I will grant him that I think Mike Wallace should have at least been given the opportunity. I think Mike was one of the best in the draft when he was racing. I know he hasn't raced in several years. He's 65 years old, I think. So, I think that again, but that we had this discussion, when that was happening last month. I think that that's more of an indictment on the current schedule we have. The fact that we're only just this year brought back a practice session before we sent the cars out for qualifying. I think if Mike had been given the opportunity and gone out there and proven that he, basic competency levels in a test session or a practice session, or maybe he could have done what Ellie Castroneves did and just run the ARCA race as a refresher. Like, I feel like there were workarounds to that. So again, it's not a perfect system by any means. I think it is flawed. We saw it with Mike Wallace this year. We saw it with Jennifer Jo Cobb in the past. There's you got to draw the line somewhere. It's going to be controversial when somebody doesn't get approved, but there are ones that I think have slipped through the cracks that probably shouldn't have. There are also ones that I think probably would have been okay that they've denied here. So, but Katherine Legge, looking at this particular instance here, like I said, doesn't have a ton of NASCAR National Series starts, but she's got a lot of sports car starts, and she's gone fast at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, like you mentioned, Matthew, the fastest woman ever at IMS. I forget if that was last year or a couple of years ago. I know the rules package on the Indy cars are getting up over. You basically have to go 230 or 231 now to make it into the fastest 33. So, I think in this particular instance, like I said, I don't have a problem with it at all. But it does make you think back to Jennifer Jo Cobb though, and bring back some bad memories from that whole deal. So we'll see how it goes though. I'm excited for Phoenix.